Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Interpretations of Metal, a series where I attempt to talk my way through my interpretation of various metal tracks, how I listen to them and what I think is significant about them, all whilst trying to make limited reference to music theory or indeed maybe the intentions of the artists themselves. As always, my thoughts on this are the only correct way to properly understand this music, and any disagreement is a sign of a terminal intellectual shortcoming on your part. In the first episode, we unpacked Munaskaigan's Slave by Gorgoroth, which is a relatively simple track from a structural perspective, but one that fertilizes a generative complexity as its different elements compound on one another as the track progresses. So for episode 2, I released my inner masochist by unpacking Demilich's the 16th, 6th, 2 for 14/4 regional dimensions still unnamed, which will require an entirely different methodology and mindset to unpick. Demilich's sole album, Nespithe, released in 1993, was something of a shibboleth amongst death metal fans for a long time. A classic, sure, but a quintessentially underground classic, largely ignored at the time of its release as an incomprehensible outlier, even in the black sheep Finnish death metal scene. They disbanded shortly after its release, but when the world of so-called old-school death metal opened up in the early 2010s and the status of Nespithe was gradually elevated from cult classic to utter canon, it spawned an entire subset of death metal, sometimes referred to as Lovecraftian. Surrealist lyrical content aside, this usually refers to the way that Demilich's style lurches between extremes of pitch alongside ever-shifting rhythmic patterns, constantly disorientating the listener, quite literally evoking images of unknowable entities and tentacles branching off in multiple directions at once. The fingers required to spider up and down the fretboard, not unlike a Lovecraftian entity of some kind. But here, I want to take a more direct, maybe less metaphorical approach with the help of some Bach. Comparisons between metal and classical are often overstated, beyond a guitar solo here and there, and some musicians taking inspiration from the spirit of the more bombastic symphonies, but there are deeper connections at work in the substrata. Maybe it's because I've been practicing a lot of Bach lately on the old Joanna, so it's at the forefront of my mind, but the comparisons are at the very least instructive, if not entirely legitimate. The way Demilich build on a simple refrain, either through the rhythm and bass playing a counter melody or returning to themes with slight variations, it bears a striking resemblance to something like Bach's Partitas. I've been working my way through the third Partita in A minor this last week, so it's very much at the forefront of my mind. The way Bach often starts a piece with a basic, even rather trite idea, tries it out at different pitches, then again with subtle bass note accompaniment. Once this simple orbit around the home base has been established, he gradually allows us to range further away with additional material. But always referring back to the main theme, sometimes at different pitches or in maybe slightly different shapes. Allowing this extra material to accumulate until an intricate, patiently crafted structure begins to emerge from this place of relative simplicity. Having listened to 16th, 6th, 2 Sun more times than you, it's clear Demilich are not quite at this level of complexity. Excluding variations in the drum pattern and vocals, I counted 11 distinct parts to this track. 5 of these can in turn be subdivided into a lead and rhythm section, but maybe only 2 of these appear to be a genuine variation on a previously stated theme. But that being said, the sheer density and flow of these ideas is still something to behold, even now over 3 decades after its release. Structurally, I think the best way to understand this track is as follows. It's an introduction, a verse, a lengthy development section made up of various components, including a guitar solo that takes us back to the verse refrain to close. In a roundabout way, this is similar to something like King Crimson's 21st Century Schizoid Man or Deep Purple's Child in Time. in that the track appears to start with a verse only to career off into an extended series of different phrases that eventually work their way back to some verse section, thus making it feel like a return home after a long meandering journey. The opening refrain, one hesitates to call it a riff, immediately demands attention. The high-end notes, articulated through a rather dry guitar tone, behave almost like an alarm, asking anyone in earshot to respond. As the drums and rhythm kick in, it takes us to our first section composed of two distinct parts, as the lead guitar continues the pulsing alarm and the rhythm undertakes a deeper, lurching motion, more tentative yet somehow threatening for the fact that it remains suppressed beneath the high-end flurry of notes. The drums are more closely tied to the articulation of this bass riff than the quick repetitions of the lead section, emphasizing a kind of faltering, stumbling rhythm, an unsettling gait in welcome contrast to the determined motion of the alarm theme. The drums cut out for a quick accent to link into an even more aggressive iteration of this siren wail. Rather than oscillating around the same handful of notes, it now orientates itself entirely around a high-end emphasis, as if the alarm is being delivered with more purpose and urgency. The deeper rhythm section cuts out, and the drums tentatively marry up with the phrasing of the guitar, barring some off-kilter accents. All this creates a sense of focus on this central activity. A single rest beat, and we jump into what I'm calling the verse. The guitars jump down to a deeper riff that, in a different context, could be considered catchy were it not for the restless drumming which keeps hinting at a ponderous groove only to interrupt itself with fills and apparent random switches in emphasis. The chief source of navigation through this verse section being a build to double tempo and back again. And then, without preparation, this switches into a post-verse refrain. A much faster variation of the alarm theme. With both guitars clearly articulating this, it feels like a bastardization of something that Iron Maiden might come up with. Or perhaps more accurately, this is a section that could easily have appeared on The Red in the Sky Is Ours when At the Gates wanted to convey a sense of fraught desperation and psychological tension. This also highlights the difference between Demilich and what their peers were doing. At the Gates would treat this kind of choppy chromaticism as an antagonist to the main character in their music, which would usually be some more traditional melodic refrain. But by the time we get to Demilich, such jagged riffing feels more natural, a clear development on the preceding material, as if we are merely continuing the conversation. It has gone from being a hostile entity to part of the furniture. And although it's hardly signposted, this is the significant point in the track where we move past the verse and begin our extended journey away from home base. The sat-nav is off. This is followed by a much slower riff repeated for a few measures. perhaps the kind of Demilich riff that is most imitated due to its emphasis on both high and low end, as opposed to the more abstract staccato clutters at the high end only. This riff displays a clear transference of energy from high to low, a kind of call and response as it cycles round each time. The drop in tempo ostensibly gives the listener the chance to catch their breath, were it not for the fact that the riff is still erratic, elastic. All instruments cut out save the bass, which carries us into our 6th major section by my count, which is perhaps the most typically death metal section of the piece, were it not for the ever-erratic time signatures. Both guitars work through what is essentially a tremolo strummed version of the preceding section. With the extremes in pitch flattened off somewhat. All instruments are given license to work around the same rudimentary idea, but each approaches it from a slightly different angle. The drums as ever being the most divergent in this regard, but the results almost feel like something that could have appeared on a Carcass album circa 1989 or 1990. A brief linking phrase sees the drum switch to a blast beat and the bass cut out, only to enter yet another section. This is essentially a lower end version of the second theme, the more urgent alarm theme from the opening of the track. I'll play them side by side to get across what I mean here. Recapitulation is an essential tool in death metal composition, and Demilich were masters of this. Due to the disorientating nature of each component part and the sheer density of distinct parts that they throw at the listener, it can be easy to lose one's way in a Demilich track. But even an inattentive listener is imbued with this liminal feeling of familiarity and repetition as similar ideas and variations of previous phrases crop up incrementally as the music progresses. Although we are now balls deep into our extended journey and well away from anything that looked like a verse, we are given the occasional signpost to more familiar ground to sort of mark the way. This is followed by a section I've lovingly called the bridge. The same theme switches to a more hesitant form as it jumps almost uncontrollably between the high and the low end. It's as if two forces are bouncing off each other and repeatedly repelling each other, only to revolve back around into another collision. The impact is somewhat offset by the vocals that cut in again. Bowman's voice is perhaps one of the most talked about aspects of Demilich, and I have little to add to the discussion here really. Suffice to say that his bizarre approach to guttural distortion only enhances the uncanny Hall of Mirrors effect of the album, as if we are being assaulted on all sides by a sensory overload of foreign experiences we are given no opportunity to properly process or understand in a context that makes sense to the human psyche. We are not so much disorientated as utterly bombarded by alien sense data. The brain, unable to properly contextualize it, is on the point of disengaging entirely. And then it all stops. For an interval just a beat longer than we would expect, all is silent. Right. Then we cut back into the verse theme and a literal siren wail of a guitar lead announces the arrival of one of the album's few guitar solos. cut into two parts, the first being this high-end scream that gradually fades into the undulating rhythm, only to gradually climb back up again as if emerging again out of the mulch. The tempo picks up again, a slice of random fretboard murder, and we're back into the verse proper. The rhythm section holding fort as the vocals replace the lead guitar and return to their labour of horror. We are, in a manner of speaking, back on home turf. And as if to reaffirm this belief in the listener, in a welcomely predictable turn of events, the post-verse alarm theme returns one last time, giving us the continuity we so desperately crave. The vocals take one last stab over the instrumentation as it works its way down to whatever qualifies as a perfect cadence in this context, which really just means the music descends into an utter stop, without resolution. Although at face value it could feel all thoroughly inconclusive, breaking it down into sections and understanding where the links are, where the divergences are, and where the returning characters are, helps to frame a picture of a piece of music that, whilst complex and certainly atypical even by death metal standards, creates a sense of flow by ensuring that each section either refers back to what preceded it or introduces something new, an ever-expanding tapestry that retains a semblance of at least moving in the same direction. They follow an internal logic that, with a little faith on the part of the listener, does lead to a conclusion, even if it feels thoroughly incomplete and random when dumped down the gullet on first listen.